Do you pull back the volume or intensity on your high notes because you're afraid that going for them might hurt your voice? I'm Katti Power. I am a vocal health expert, performance coach, speaker, author, and the founder of Total Vocal Health. I have spent the past 20 plus years helping performers achieve amazing goals that they set for themselves, all without ever losing their voices. And about 6 weeks ago, I posted about the 5 most common myths about singing and vocal health that I hear from singers and speakers all the time. Since then, I have been breaking down each one of them for you. And today we are on myth number 5, the last one, which is that pulling back on your high notes in an attempt to save your voice is actually more likely causing you bigger problems than it is solving them. I'm going to tell you about some singers that relate to this. So years ago, I taught a live workshop in person to a room full of singers. I do this on occasion. I will travel. I used to travel full time, and so as I was in a different city, I might be like, hey, I have this workshop. And so this was one of those situations. And we learned as a group how to sing powerfully and healthily, so that voice loss was never a thing, and so that they would no longer be limited in their singing abilities. And here's the thing, sometimes we get in our heads about high notes, particularly, because they're scary. And when our fear response is triggered, then what happens is that we tend to tighten those throat muscles on our high notes, and we'll hold back on volume out of fear that producing that high note is going to somehow hurt us. And sometimes it does. So it's understandable that we would have that fear. So several of the singers in the class were visibly holding back when we would sing the high notes together as a group. So I decided to bring it up. And I mentioned that oftentimes, to this class, I mentioned to them that oftentimes with high notes, particularly when they are high enough that you aren't accustomed to singing them, it requires you to make a little bit more sound for those pitches to come out, which is opposite of what it feels like we should do. So I had them do an exercise which I use a lot. I had them stand across the room from everyone else and imagine that they had a water balloon in their hand and they had to throw it at someone that was on the other side of the room. So we did the exercise again, and I told them that on the high note, I wanted them to throw that water balloon with all their might at a specific person that's across the room. So they each decided who they were going to throw it to. And I specified that, I'm not very athletic, but I know that if I just throw kind of like this, that the ball doesn't really go anywhere. But if I put my whole body into it, that it has a chance of actually getting to the target, right? So I specified they needed to put their whole bodies into it in order for that water balloon, even though it's imaginary, to reach their target. So we did the exercise, and upon throwing those imaginary water balloons, those singers discovered that the high note was a breeze. Also, it didn't hurt at all. And the looks on their faces, they were like, because they heard the note come out and they felt how easy it was, yeah? So this is just a simple exercise that can help you get out of your head when it comes to singing a high note if you're someone who tends to pull back because of any kind of fear for any reason. However, I do want to say that if your technique needs adjusting for your high notes to be simplified, then that's a totally different story. But if it's just a fear thing, if you know what to do but you're afraid and you feel yourself holding back, trying to protect yourself, that's a great little tool to help you, just like it helped the gals in that class. So either way, tricky high notes are surprisingly quite easy to fix. And if they're a struggle for you, then I would love to talk with you about how we can get you to the other side of those scary high notes so that they're effortless and beautiful and totally pain-free. I want to specify that this is not an across-the-board no to do. But in the circumstance that we're talking about, it is. So a very popular style element, especially in pop music, is to kind of power through a lyric and then sing the high note very soft and breathy. That is not the kind of pulling back that I'm talking about. That is an intentional style choice. So what I'm talking about is doing it more out of fear or out of a false belief that you can't. A lot of times, and especially when singers are first learning how to belt, their instinct is to make less sound on the high notes because it seems scary. Even if you are belting correctly in every other way, if you are making this tiny little misstep, it can cause a load of problems. So belting is loud, and it's just naturally loud. And we are typically taught as people that being loud is scary or inappropriate, right? So naturally it makes sense that it would be much scarier to be even louder than the already scary loudness that belting requires, right? So belting high notes, especially in the beginning when you're brand new to it, requires two essential things: volume and space. And I want to be abundantly clear here that I do not mean the open space like in classical singing. When those two essential things are missing from a high belt, it can feel really, I call it pinchy. It feels kind of like someone's like pinching in your throat, or it can feel scratchy in there. So if you're not doing that, if you're pulling back and holding back, even if you're doing everything technically correctly otherwise, that can cause you to feel scratchy and pinchy. And when you continue to sing high notes in that way, like I said, even if you're technically belting correctly, it can cause wear and tear on your cords. So if you suspect that this might be a problem that you're having, then I would love to invite you to schedule a complimentary power-up session with me so that we can get you on a better path to vocal health. Because I want to ask you, what if those high notes weren't scary? And what if they were powerful and beautiful and they gave people, even yourself, goosebumps? This is more than possible for you. And I would love to help you master those high notes. So you're gonna wanna go to www.getmypowerup.com. And what's gonna happen when you go to that link? It's gonna bring you to a page that will first ask you to select a button to ask you like what kind of performer you are. So you're gonna want the first one that says you're a singer or an actor. And then it's going to take you to a brief questionnaire so that I can get to know a little bit more about you and your specific struggles. And then you'll be taken to my calendar to set up a time to chat with me over Zoom. Then you'll get a confirmation email that has a Zoom link, and you'll get a reminder prior to our session. Then, once we get on the call, I'm going to ask you a few more questions. I might have questions about some of the answers you gave me already. And then based on that conversation, if I determine that we're going to be a good fit for each other, if you'd be a good fit for me as a client, then I'm going to make you an offer so that we can get started right away. So if you would like to schedule a call like this, the place to go is getmypowerup.com. This does not have to be a struggle for you, especially high notes, which I know to some people seems like such a big deal, and they are, but they're so manageable. This is something that's easy to fix, and I would love to help you fix it. So let's master those high notes.